Hey everybody, it's me, Rick, the Dodger card collector. This is episode 4, and if you've made it this far to episode 4, you've noticed all I've done for 3 videos is talk. So I thought I'd show some cards. Basically, this is going to be my top 25. Just a disclaimer, that card right there is just a placeholder. I'll explain that to you in a moment. Just a couple of rules, just so you know, as I do call myself Dodger card collector, I do have a lot of Dodger cards on this list, but it's not exclusively Dodger cards. So I would say it's roughly 60% Dodger cards, maybe 70% Dodger cards, and the rest will be Hall of Famers. I am basing my rankings off the current vintage card price, the VCP, as of today, July 16th. So let's get underway. But before we get underway, I did want to show off this card, the 1973 Bobby Bonds. Bobby Bonds, the card was my favorite card growing up, and it's still one of my favorite cards today. The 1973 set was the very first set I ever bought cards for, the very first set I ever completed. It's just a labor of love. I know some of you out there aren't too fond of some of the bad action shots, but I love this card because look at Bobby Bonds is about to get picked off or attempted pickoff at first base. Willie Stargell was playing first base. Bobby Bonds isn't wearing a helmet. I do remember back then players didn't have to wear helmets when they ran the bases. And this picture was taken at the old Candlestick Park. I'm assuming sometime in 1972. So again, this is one of my favorite cards growing up. And don't ever forget your favorite cards just because they're still awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the list. Coming in at number 25 is the 1957 Tops Dodger Sluggers, featuring Carl Furillo, Gil Hodges, Roy Campanella, and Duke Snyder. For me, growing up as a Los Angeles Dodger fan, these guys to me were practically the Mount Rushmore. Carl Furillo and Hodges and Campy and Duke. I wish Jackie Robinson were in this card, but he wasn't on the Dodgers by 1957. So I bought this card raw. And then my brother, not realizing that I owned the card, gave me the slabs version for Christmas a long time ago. I still have both cards because I'm building a 57 set. So the raw card is just in my binder, and this one goes on my display wall. So at number 25, that was the Dodger Slugger card. Coming in at number 24 is the 1941 play ball Jimmy Fox. One of the things that I've really loved about card collecting is not only do I collect Dodger cards, but I collect vintage cards, and I build sets from the 70s and sometimes the 60s. Is I've wanted to include as many great players as I possibly can. And I've worked my way backwards, and when I reached the 40s, I said, I need some great players from the 30s and the 40s who aren't named Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig just because they're so expensive. And two of the guys that came up, one of them being Mel Ott, who's not in this countdown. The other was Jimmy Fox. These are guys I never saw play, but I just heard their names so much growing up when you were talking about Hank Aaron or Eddie Matthews or Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle. And I said, I want a Jimmy Fox card. I love the 1941 play ball set, so I thought, let's get this card. So at number 24 is Jimmy Fox. Coming in at 23, the 1956 Tops Roberto Clemente. I'm a big Roberto Clemente fan. I remember seeing him play on television during the 1971 World Series against the Orioles. I just was amazed. I was only 6 years old, but I was amazed by the way he hit the ball, how he caught the ball, how he threw the ball, especially that one play to home, where he threw the ball to home plate. He was just a great all-around player, and I've always been a big fan of his. When I went to Pittsburgh in 2019, I went to the Roberto Clemente Museum with my brother, and that was an amazing experience just to get to see all the memorabilia and the history and scenes. There was all his cards were laid out. So if you're in Pittsburgh to see a Pirates game, you definitely have to make a point to go check out the Forbes Field where Mazeroski hit the home run, but also the Roberto Clemente Museum is definitely a must. So at 23, that was Roberto Clemente. Coming in at number 22, Mr. Tiger, Al Kaline, 1954 Tops. I barely remember Al, but I do remember him in 1974 when he got his 3,000th hit. My memory of his was in college, I interned for the California Angels, and Kaline worked at was a color commentator back then for the Tigers. And I kind of bumped into him, and he smiled and said hello, and he was just a really nice man. And I was instructed not to speak to anyone unless spoken to. So I said hello to him, and like I said, he was just a kind man. So that's my memory of him. Obviously, he won the batting title, I believe, at 21 years old in 1955, 3,000 hits, Hall of Famer, World Series champion in 1968. So at number 22, that was Al Kaline. At number 21, I never knew this. This is one of the beauties about card collecting. I never knew about these type of cards growing up or even 5 years ago. But once I started watching some of these YouTube videos and Instagram posts of people posting their cards, I discovered the 1913 Fatima team card set. And I go, I've got to get a Brooklyn card. I just absolutely have to. This card features Hall of Famer Zach Wheat, a very young baseball player by the name of Casey Stengel, who would later go on to manage the Dodgers, and of course the New York Yankees. And this was their 1913 Fatima card. And I was ecstatic when I bought this. I think I bought it from Clean Sweep Auctions. Coming in at number 20, we're now in the top 20. And we've got a 1949 Bowman Edwin Duke Snyder rookie card. Obviously, I'm a big Duke Snyder fan, and this is a well-loved card. If you can look closely, you can see that it looks like somebody had it in their scrapbook. But I'm one of those who buys the card, not the grade. And it's just a wonderful card for me to have in my collection. 1949 Bowman Duke Snyder. Coming in at number 19 is the brand new Hall of Famer, Gil Hodges, his Duke's teammate. I picked up this card when it was really cheap, and if you look at the VCP, it's really gone up in the past 6 months. I am one of those who was supportive of Hodges making the Hall of Fame. I understand that Vin Scully also wrote a letter to the Hall mentioning some of the good things he had done outside of the baseball world. And I think in my opinion, the Hall of Fame committees over the years had said, oh, we have Robinson, we have Campy, we have Pee Wee, we have Duke, we have Koufax, we have Drysdale, we don't need any more Dodgers. And I think everybody kind of excluded Gil Hodges, and even for that matter, Don Newcomb, but that's another story. So I'm super ecstatic that Gil Hodges is inducted. I was able to attend. Hodges got his number retired finally from the Dodgers. The Mets did it ages ago. The Dodgers just retired it a few weeks ago, and it was really great to see the fans' reaction. Coming in at number 18 is a Piedmont T206 Zach Wheat. To show you how much the times have changed when it comes to pricing, I remember this was on eBay for $125 or best offer. I asked the guy, will he take 100? He said he would. I think the VCP is at least 4 times that now. I don't know much about Zach Wheat. I do know that he was one of the first Dodgers, along with Dazzy Vance, to be inducted into the MLB Hall of Fame. And I know he tried managing the Dodgers later, but Dodgers weren't a great organization in the 30s, in the 20s, in the 40s. In the 40s, eventually, things turned around. But Zach Wheat played for the Brooklyn Superbas in the early half of the 20th century. So that is card number 18. Coming in at number 17, another Bowman card. 1949 Bowman Roy Campanella, the Dodger catcher who's unfortunately got into a car accident in early 1958, which left him handicapped from the waist down. I believe he won the MVP 3 times in 1953, 1955, and I want to say 1956. No, 1951. 1951, 1953, and 1955. Campy won the MVP, and a great player. And he comes in at number 17. At number 16, a card I picked up this year, the 1953 Topps Satchel Paige. I was working on the 1953 set the past couple of years, and this was the last card I needed. Again, a well-loved card, but for a PR1, I think it's a great-looking card. And I've heard a lot about Satchel Paige. I wish I could see, baseballreference.com said they were going to include the Negro League statistics on the website, but when you look up the stats, 99% of the stats are still missing. And it's probably because back then they didn't take care of the stats or pay attention to the stats, but I would love to have seen this player's stats. So Satchel Paige coming in, I believe I said 15. Yeah, coming in at 14, a 1957 Topps Sandy Koufax. My story of Sandy Koufax is going to be more personal. I met him at the National, I want to say somewhere in the mid-90s in Anaheim, and he was the nicest human being I ever met in my life. And I was first in line, and he stood up, he shook my hand, he asked me what my name was. I told him my name was Rick, and he said, "Nice to meet you, Rick." And I asked him if he personalized my 16 by 20 autograph photo, and he said, "Sure." And he signed it, and I think I thanked him. I shook his hand one more time, walked away. I had the biggest smile on my face. I felt like I was 12 years old, and I was seriously, I think, probably like a 35-year-old man at that point. The one funny thing about the story that to this day still bugs me was that I didn't take the time or the money to spend an additional $60 because one Joe Namath was sitting at the next table and being a sweetheart of a man to everybody who was visiting him. And back then, $60 for the autograph, $20 for the photo. I remember the top loader that you would put your photo in was $10. That was $90, and I just didn't have the money for that. So I skipped meeting Joe Namath, and I've been a huge fan of Namath my entire life, but I chose to get the Koufax autograph instead. So there is Sandy Koufax coming in, I believe, at 14. I'm kind of losing count here. All right, next on my list, the first of two 1954 cards, the 1954 Topps Jackie Robinson. Does anyone remember a few years ago, eBay had this wonderful promotion where all of a sudden they would announce that today was 15% off on cards? That's why I won this card. eBay had this, the seller had it for $125, and I thought I could get 15% off, and I think that brought the card down to $100, and I bought it. And eBay had several of those 15% offers. They disappeared, I think, when the pandemic, right around the time of the pandemic. But this was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first Robinsons that I was able to buy. 1954 Jackie Robinson. Coming in at number 13, 1954 Tops Tom Lasorda, my favorite manager in the entire world. This was a gift from my brother. My brother gave me a lot of cards. My brother, he never knew what to buy me for Christmas, and he had the most incredible vinyl record collection. And so he collected the vinyl, I collected the baseball cards, and he got me this and a few other. He got me like 5 over the years. He bought me 5 cards. Unfortunately, my brother passed, so I would never let go of any of the cards he gave me. And like I said, his vinyl record collection was amazing. I'm actually holding on to it for his daughter until she's ready to buy her own house. Between my baseball card collection and his vinyl record collection, I think we could drop some jaws. I think his record, between you and I think his record collection is way better than my baseball card collection. But so here is my 1954 Topps Tommy Lasorda. Coming in at number 12. Don't want to have a little accident here with this pile of cards. A 1965 Tops Mickey Mantle. I worked on the 65 set a couple of years ago, and at that point I was buying most of my cards raw, but I started realizing, you know, like my Hank Aaron is a raw card, my Ernie Banks is a raw card. But once I started getting into like Mays and Mantle and the rookies like Carlton and Tony Perez and Joe Morgan, and I'm missing somebody in that group. I'm going to kick myself. I think a Catfish Hunter. I said, I need to get some graded cards because I was starting to get a little worried because for the first time I was starting to spend over $100 on cards. And I guess that's kind of where my rule started is if you're going to spend more than $100, the card has to be slabbed. So I bought this Mickey Mantle at 4.5 and pretty pleased with it. I think that was the first Mickey Mantle card I've ever owned. I don't have many Mantles in my collection, less than 5, but this one's my first, and that was at number 12. At number 11, some of you will call this the most beautiful baseball card ever made, and I'll tend to agree with it. The only reason I probably agree with it is because Pee Wee's on the Dodgers, but it's a 1953 Bowman color Pee Wee Reese. I know everyone here loves the 53 Bowman set. I raise my hand along with you because I think it's stunning. As I mentioned, I'm working on a 57 set, and the photos aren't as nice as those 53 Bowmans. I do have the Dodger team card, the Dodger team set, and I think that's all I've got on the 53 Bowmans, but that's a beautiful set to own. And at number 10, now we enter the top 10, and Pee Wee Reese is going to make one more appearance here. 1941 play ball Pee Wee Reese. When I first started collecting Dodger team cards, I said I was only going to work on Tops from 1953 to current day. Eventually, I added 51 and then the 52 low numbers. And then I added the Bowmans from 48 to 55, minus the Jackie. And back then I said, you know what? It would be the coup de, it would be the best way to finish this Dodger team set would be to get the 1941 play ball Dodgers team. Only 5 cards. Pee Wee's the only rookie, and the hardest one to get, obviously. And so I picked this card up and finished my Dodger play ball set. And after that, all of a sudden, I started buying 30s Goudies. So unfortunately, the fever never ends. All right, we're in. Oh no, that was number 10. Coming in at number 9, everybody's favorite modern ball player is Mike Trout. And I think he's a great ball player. I really do. I wish he played for a better team. I wish he would played in the postseason. Yeah, I think he's been in the postseason once. But I have to have this card. The one thing I've learned you learn a lot when you're buying cards, and I have 2 display walls in my home. One is an entire wall of Dodger greats or Dodger Hall of Famers from 1909 to present day. And then I have a shorter wall that has 60 Hall of Famers or potential Hall of Famers. And Mike Trout's on there. And I notice when I bring my young cousins over, and they like to they love looking at my cards. When they look at the 60 Hall of Famers with some soon-to-be Hall of Famers, they get most excited about the Mike Trout. And it made me realize, I got to add some modern cards into my collection because they might ask me, who's Mel Ott? Who's Jimmy Fox? Who's Eddie Collins? But when they see a Mike Trout or an Albert Pujols or a Miguel Cabrera, they get excited. So I've learned from them to add some modern to, yeah, this collection's for me, but I also do want to show it off, like the way I'm showing it off to you guys. I want to show it off when people come over. So I added some modern cards. So coming in number 9 is first ballot Hall of Famer someday, Mike Trout. Coming in at number 8, we're going to start seeing a lot of this guy. The 1955 Jackie Robinson. I think I bought this card raw, and I submitted it to PSA when you could. I think I got it back in 6 weeks. And it's a great card to have. I think the 55 Topps set, Dodger set, was one of the easiest I ever worked on, fastest and quickest I ever worked on, just because I lucked into a lot of cards. Speaking of 1955, coming in at number 7, my favorite ball player in the entire world is Sandy Koufax. This was the first dream card. This for me was when I got back into collecting and was collecting 70s and some 80s cards and working on some 60s cards. I go, I want a Sandy Koufax card. When I was 13 or 14, my brother had a friend and he knew I collected cards. He showed up with a shoebox full of cards. And in there, it looked like, he fully didn't show me the cards, which is why I'm only speculating, excuse me. He had a shoebox full of cards, and in there was a 1955 Sandy Koufax, a 1955 Roberto Clemente, and 2 1955 Ted Williams cards. He saw that he had 2 cards, and he gave me one. To this day, I still have it. It's a PSA 1. I got it graded. It was a beater, but I loved that card. I held on to it all these years. But back then, he had the Kofax. And since that day, I've wanted that card, and I finally was able to buy this several years ago. The 1955 Tops Sandy Koufax. I always think about whatever happened to that shoebox worth of card, with that shoebox of cards, because there must have been some good-looking cards in there. Coming in at number 6, a Jackie Robinson 1953 Tops card. Here's another card that my brother gave to me. He gave it to me raw, and I submitted it to PSA when you could, and it came back at 2. And I think, oh no, I got one more, so I'll save that spiel for Jackie later. So there is number 6, the 1953 Tops Jackie Robinson. Coming in at number 5, his first appearance in my top 25, the 1953 Tops Willie Mays. You guys, I already told you I was working on the 53 set. This was one I needed to work on. I probably overpaid a little for this card just because none of us know how much longer Willie's going to be around. And the interesting thing is I keep telling myself I overpaid. I'm still, I paid a little bit more than the VCP price, but to this day I can't find a PR1 that's as nice as this one for less than $1,800. So in my eyes, I think I got a good deal. I think I won this from like a Robert Edwards auction or something like that. Love this card. I always wonder what it would be like to own a 6 or a 7 or an 8, but love the 53 Mays. Coming in at number 4, another 53 card, a 1953 Tops Mickey Mantle. I bought this card almost a year ago, right after the National. I was watching the Golden Age of Cardboard with Mike Moynihan, and he was talking about auction houses. I think the whole subject dealt with how to get cards besides eBay. And he mentioned a lot of auction houses, and I just wrote them down, put them in the computer. And from that moment on, I started checking out auction houses. And the week everybody came back from last year's National, this card I think everybody spent all their money at the National, because I got this card like 40% off VCP price. It was a price, I actually bid a particular amount going, somebody's gonna pass me. Nobody ever outbid me. And I won the card, and I was just completely stoked. Love this Mickey Mantle. You notice it's a 1.5 MK. And let's see if you can see it here. Oh, there it is with the light. Somebody next to that 82 put a K, someone named Keith or Kyle or Kevin. Sometimes I like the marks just because I'm assuming that's some young man in the early 50s writing his name or marking his cards. I know I used to mark my cards. So that is at number 4, the 1953 Tops Mickey Mantle. Coming in at number 3, the 1963 Tops Kim Mcmullen. That's how I viewed it, being a Dodger card collector, team set collector. when I was working on the 1963 Dodger team set, I was finding the cards. I was having some troubles, though, with high numbers. That was the first time I really started encountering issues with high numbers. That and the 67s and the 61s were really hard to get. When I got to to 1963, though, I kept saying, gosh, how come I don't see a Kim Mcmullen card on eBay when I look it up? So I finally went and got the card number, and I punched it into eBay, and this card popped up, and I went, oh my God, it's stuck to a Pete Rose rookie. I remember texting my brother, and I go, the 1963 Kim Mcmullen card is also the 1963 Pete Rose card. He couldn't stop laughing. And I just go, God, I guess I'm going to, if I want to finish my Dodger team set, I guess I'm going to have to buy this card. And over the years, I have encountered Yankee team collectors. They call the card the 1963 Pedro Gonzalez card. And they either complain that they have the card or they don't have the card, but we all complain about the price. I have not met a White Sox fan who complains about the Al Weiss being on here, but I always thought that's the one of the most expensive Dodger rookie cards I ever bought. That and I'm gonna have to get the card out, but I can tell you the 1966 Grant Jackson, he played for the Phillies. The Dodger who's in there, I can't even name him. I think it's Bob Shirley or Bart Shirley. I think he played like 5 games for the Dodgers, and I paid like $180 for that card. It's ridiculous. I'll have to show that card off one day. Coming in at number 2, the 1950 Bowman Jackie Robinson. I won this card this year, again, through an auction house. Again, below VCP. I don't know how I won it, but I did. This makes, of the 8 major Jackie Robinson cards, I own 5. And I'll be honest with you, this will probably be the last one that I own because I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford the 1952 Tops or the 1949 Bowman or the 48-49 Leaf. Those are just way out of my bracket at this point. It's going to take a lottery or something for me to get those. But this is my favorite Jackie Robinson card. If I don't ever get another Robinson card, I am absolutely ecstatic with the 5 that I do own. So that's the 1950 Bowman Jackie Robinson. Coming in at number 1, and I know this one is purely based on the grade that it got, is the 1956 Tops Whiteback Jackie Robinson PSA 6.5. I bought this card raw. I either bought it raw or my brother gave it to me raw, and I submitted it a few years ago with all the other cards. I've only ever done one PSA submission in my life, and this one came back as 6.5. I think the whitebacks are rarer. If I have any 56 Tops set collectors, let me know what the case is. But that comes in at number 1. So that's my top 25. If you're still watching, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to let me know what you think, or if you have any tips or any comments, just let me know, guys, all right? All right, have a good one. See ya.